when you answer all the questions, it kind of turns out that way. But it's basically that after all these years, I've tried so many things and I finally found what I liked and stuck with it. I'd say for the past 10 years, we've been on pretty much the same method.
Yeah.
So I started out with Sunlight about 10 years ago, which is kind of a Charlotte Mason, a whole book method, where all your history and geography and science is all from reading a lot of books together, and you just follow a timeline. And I loved it. And so what I started doing was branching out from what they had and adding and changing a little bit. So I still, if you're familiar with Sunlight or maybe Veritas Press curriculum, I still kind of follow that method.
Hey everybody, it's me, Lacey Graham. I am here again today with Nicki Truesdell, and we are going to be talking about homeschooling. And there's a lot of new homeschoolers out there, and of course there's always the experienced homeschoolers out there, and that is exactly what Nicki is. She has experienced both being homeschooled and homeschooling herself, so I cannot wait to hear about that journey. But we will share some nuggets and some wisdom that will probably help you whether you're homeschooling or not. Just be excited about learning at any age. So we actually did the Homeschool Summit a couple of weeks ago. It's still available for purchase, and Nicki was a key player in that, and I'm really excited to get to know her a little bit better with you guys. And Nicki, without further ado, would you please go ahead and introduce yourself and maybe give us a brief history of your sort of journey from wherever into being the homeschool advocate that you are now?
Well, I'm Nicki Truesdell, and I live in Texas with my husband, and I have 5 kids, 4 still currently living at home. 1's married. 2 of those have graduated from their whole life of homeschooling. So I currently homeschool 3 kids right now. So like you mentioned, I was homeschooled as a kid. Now I have been to public school, and I did that through 5th grade. And then sometime during that year, my parents were introduced to homeschooling. And of course, a long time ago, it's 1983. So there were not a lot of homeschoolers around at that time. In fact, the only ones we knew were this family that had introduced my parents to it. And so we just jumped in and began homeschooling that fall in 1983. And it was very traditional looking, just like you would imagine a private school. It was kind of a private school curriculum that we used. Anyway, my parents got arrested a month later because we were truant.
And oh no, my goodness.
Yeah. Now it was in Oklahoma, and it was not against the law to homeschool, but no one knew that. And so that's why the sheriff showed up at our door one morning. A really small town. And so everybody knew that there were some kids not at school. And so my parents and my aunt, who was also homeschooling, were taken to the sheriff's office. And they stayed there all day, but they got lawyers on the phone immediately. And so they were not actually put in the jail cell, but they stayed there all day working through, all the legal issues. And were released to go home. And so there was supposed to be a court hearing, and homeschoolers just kind of started appearing out of nowhere and calling and saying that they were praying for my parents and my aunt. And before January, when the court date was supposed to happen, the charges were dropped. So
wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, that was our start.
That is so funny. So it's interesting to me because I think about homeschooling as kind of like getting back to before public school was a thing, and like it would have been kind of a normal thing. I wonder when the line crossed into, if you didn't go to school, you were the weird one. It had to have been in the 50 years before that, right?
Yeah. Somewhere in the 20th century, because the early part of the 20th century, a lot of kids were still not going to public school. It became, I think it became mass schooling sometime in the 30s and 40s.
Okay.
A lot of men went to war, so the women went to work, and the kids had somewhere to go. And that's kind of how it came to be the American way. But yeah, it wasn't always that way. And so I think, last 50 to 70 years is when, if you weren't at school, then you were the one who was weird.
Right. Yeah. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
That is fascinating. Okay, so then share with us a little bit about your homeschool experience, just growing up. What did that look like for you? And did you like it compared to your public school experience? Okay.
Yes, I did. So like I said, I started homeschooling in the 6th grade, and it was new, obviously, to all of us. It was new to my mom and dad. I have a sister who is 3 years younger than me. And so it's like what you would imagine the old time homeschoolers were. That's what we were. We lived out in the country. We did sit at a desk for certain school hours, Monday through Friday. We did not go anywhere, because if you did, you got tons of questions, and it was very uncomfortable to go out in public during the school day. And we used ACE curriculum. And so we were very structured with the paces that they have. But we still had a lot of free time. Even though we were on a very traditional school schedule, we still had a lot of free time. And I think that's what helped me and my sister so much. I can look back now and see how much of who we are was developed during that time. I loved journaling and writing and reading way back then. I had a lot of time to do it. My sister started taking pictures of her stuffed animals and our pets, and she's a photographer now. I mean, she
Oh,
started back then just kind of posing and doing things. So we really had that. We had so much free time to explore what we wanted, and we also had that close family bond because we were mostly with our parents all day. There was a little socialization, but not like you have now. But it was just such a neat way to grow up. And so I knew this is what I wanted for my.
it's so interesting that you know that the curriculum is such an afterthought of like
It is.
in your experience, like being raised in a homeschooling family. It's not the curriculum that you remember, even though I think that that's where most of the people who are coming into it right now, or I mean,
Mhm.
even myself, we've been doing it for 15 years, and it's still like, am I doing the right curriculum? Am I?
Yes,
And it doesn't really matter. It's
it
not
does.
that crucial, right? I mean, it's just
No.
interesting.
In fact, I see that question so much online. What's the best curriculum for this age or this grade or the subject?
Mhm.
And I finally just now I say there's not a best. There's not a best one because it depends on so many things.
Right.
And even if you have the cheapest, worst one that's available to you, your
Mhm.
kids can still learn from it and you
Oh,
can
for
make it
sure.
work
Yeah.
for a time, whatever that time is. And that's what I push so much is that, make it work for your circumstances right now, whatever they are.
Yeah.
And then, look for something else later. But there is not a best homeschool curriculum.
Oh,
There's a
thank you.
lot of great ones, but it really doesn't matter.
Really doesn't matter. Oh, I love that. Well, and I will say that your website is a good resource because you do share, what your favorites are for different things.
Yes,
And I know, like
I
math,
do have favorites.
you
Yeah.
have favorites. And so I was excited to see because I was going to buy the math. You see, finally, I'm breaking down and I'm going to buy that one math curriculum. And you were a proponent of that too. But yeah, I mean, I think that's ultimately the truth is, maybe you're working with workbooks that were in the dollar section of Target and
Right.
it's okay.
I've done that. Yeah.
Me too.
Yes.
So awesome. Okay. Very, very good. So, okay, now let's compare your experience as a child. What does it look like for you in terms of homeschooling your own family? And how have you maybe kept some of the same things and left some of the things? And how does that compare?
I would say I have tried to preserve some of that, even though it's such a different time to homeschool and it's so much easier now. So
Sure.
many more things available as far as books and curriculum. The internet was invented.
Right.
um, and then also the co-ops, all kinds
Yeah.
of things that you can go out and do during the day. The opportunities are so endless.
Hmm.
So there's so much more that makes it easier. But I really do encourage parents to try to keep the home part in their homeschooling because what I've seen over 20 years of being a homeschool mom is that all these great opportunities came up and then suddenly everyone signs up for all of them until they're never home
Hmm.
anymore. They're always in the car or their kids are always trying to do math in the back seat and then they got to
And
rush to
schooling.
the next class. Yeah.
Right.
And I've been there, so I know. And when I was doing that, I had many little kids. It seems like at the time, and so it was just stressful. Everybody was
Yeah.
cranky, and all of a sudden we weren't having fun, and we weren't at home, And
Right.
so I really, I thought, these are all great things. You don't have to do all of them. You don't have to do any of them,
Yes.
especially if you got little ones. It just takes a toll on your family if you're packing kids in car seats and having to get their snacks and all that. And so
Yeah.
I would say I have really embraced more of what we did back then, which is being home more, being a family more, making sure we have lots of that downtime
Yeah.
together.
Ah, yes, it's so important. I think that we do. I think sometimes as homeschoolers, we fear we're gonna not give our kids enough
Yeah,
opportunities or
yeah,
experiences, and so we try to compensate with everything.
yes,
And
that's
even
exactly
sometimes,
right.
I think it's a way of, especially if your family's not all on board or
Hmm.
whatever, we try to fill in all the holes and say, "Look how much my kid is doing," and,
Exactly.
that makes us feel better. But that is really not where the beauty in all of this lies for our family. It's,
Yes.
I think honestly with COVID, one of the huge benefits has been that even for us who I say no a lot,
Hmm.
have done nothing and it's
Yes.
been amazing, right?
Yeah,
So
I notice, we live in Texas, and so when there is an ice storm or a snowstorm, which is rare, everything shuts down. Like nobody here knows how to
Yeah.
survive.
Yeah.
And then everybody I see, even my homeschool friends say, wow, this has been the best time. We made
Right.
cookies and we read stories together and we did all these things. And I think
Uh-huh.
you could do that all the time, you know. You don't have to
Yeah.
wait for COVID or a snowstorm. This could be your whole life. And that's
So
what I want
hard.
people to
Yeah.
know. Yeah, just stay home. Do one activity and then stay home, you know, and it's not like we'll stay home and do what? You'll find so
Mhm.
many cool things to do with your family once, you know, you kind of force yourself into that boredom. That's what I do with my kids. I let them get bored and then
Exactly.
they get creative and
Yeah.
they do a lot of cool things.
So one of my favorite tips for people who are like, well, my kids just don't know how to not, do screen time. And we struggle with that too. But
Oh yeah,
when they're, screen time's pretty limited at our house. And when they come to me and they say, well, I'm bored. I say, well, that's perfect because I have a really long
exactly.
list of things for you to do.
I
And they're
say
like,
that
never
too.
mind, I can
They
find.
get really mad,
Yeah,
but they'll run off and
no,
they find
no,
things to do that they wouldn't have done if I had said, "Yeah, go ahead and watch a movie or something." They get
exactly.
really creative and then they forgot. They forgot that they wanted to do, you know, screen time
I
and then they
even,
turn out to be
yeah.
better people.
Exactly. My one child, she got a punishment of not being able to watch TV for a couple of weeks at
Yeah.
all, nothing. And she at first was very upset about it, but then like 3 days into it, she's like, I actually think I like it better this way.
Isn't that funny?
Because she was just finding different things to do. She had to, and she wasn't missing it at all. So yeah, I think it's one of those things that
You know, you asked about the differences between my growing up and now, and my parents went really radical. And so we didn't just homeschool, we didn't have a TV
right.
either.
Yeah.
And so I grew up without a TV for many years. And then when they finally brought one into the house, we only watched, you know, black and white shows like, you know, I Love Lucy and Gunsmoke. I know
Yeah.
all the TV westerns because that's what we watched. But yeah, but because of that, I have an appreciation for so many other things because we just
Right.
didn't have that. In fact, I remember we would listen to MASH on the radio because some radio station played it, so we'd all gather around, and it was like the 40s or something. But it
Wow.
was a treat and it was fun, and but it didn't take up our whole lives, you know.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
so hard now, so hard, but I just keep on trying.
Right. Keep on trying. All right. So let's see. We've talked a little bit about maybe you want to share we've talked with others about methods of homeschooling, whether it's like Charlotte Mason or classical or Waldorf. Where do you feel like you fall? And maybe what are some of your recommendations with that?
I would say I'm eclectic, and that just means I do quite a few different methods together. Basically, what I've done is found the different curriculum that I like for each subject, and I use a lot of different things.
Mhm.
And so I did take a quiz because people keep asking me, what style are you? So the
Yeah,
quiz told me that I am part Charlotte Mason, part classical,
that sounds,
which is
yeah.
funny, you know, because I don't necessarily go and do certain things that are Charlotte Mason or classical, but when you answer all the questions, it kind of
Yeah.
turned out that way. But it's basically that after all these years, I've tried so many things and I finally found what I liked
Yeah.
and stuck with it. I'd say for the past 10 years, we've been on pretty much the same method.
Yeah.
So I started out with Sunlight about 10 years ago, which is kind of a Charlotte Mason, a
Mhm.
whole book method, you know, where
Right.
all your history and geography and science is all from reading a lot of books together and you just follow a timeline. And I loved it. And so what I started doing was branching out from what they had and adding and changing a little bit. So I still, if you're familiar with Sunlight or maybe Veritas Press curriculum,
Mhm.
I still kind of follow that method.
Okay.
Although now I use Mystery of History as my spine book, which the
Okay.
spine is, you know, this
I've
is
heard
my
that.
book that guides me through the years.
Yeah.
But we read lots of books and do activities. And I have a blog post called Making History Fun. And that's kind of showing all the different ways that we pull in history. So it's not in a curriculum. You kind of have to just say, okay, what are we studying now? I wonder what would be fun. Let's look it up and
Mhm.
see. So
I love that. I think that's really cool. My daughter she's studying ancient China, and one of the things it recommended, or maybe it's not ancient, it's China at some point, and having her make fortune cookies is on the
yes,
list. And so
Perfect.
that's just
Yeah.
a really good example, I think, of like,
And
okay,
she'll remember it. It'll tie her learning. Food always ties in the learning. We were this week, so we made milkshakes. You
oh,
you could go to a diner that still has them, or go to a drive-in and get hamburgers. You could do a lot of stuff, but I was like pressed for time, and so we did milkshakes in the kitchen.
I love
But we put the whipped cream on top and the cherries, and then we turned on music videos of 1950s music, and
oh,
so
I love that.
we
Yeah.
were studying the Korean War, but we also did the fun stuff so that hopefully they'll remember. It just kind of ties it all together for them, and it's more than just blah 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 communism. They get the whole picture. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love
that's
that.
how we do that. And then we do Matthew C for all levels. I don't do language arts formally until they're about middle school and high school. So before that I do copy work, just all kinds of copy work. And that's a very Charlotte Mason thing. And so up until probably 10, 11, 12 years old, that's all my kids do. And read,
Yeah.
they
And
read.
copy work really is just copying. Like they have a paragraph that they're just copying onto a page,
Yeah.
which develops
Mhm.
handwriting skills and punctuation,
Spelling,
spelling. Yeah.
yeah, vocabulary, everything that makes a proper sentence they're doing, and they're copying it from great writers or even songs or poetry or anything. So yeah, that's something that I started doing in the last several years.
Yeah, I love that. I think I was a little apprehensive about the effectiveness of it, but our kids seem to really have their handwriting has improved,
Yes.
and all of those things have fallen into place without a really structured kind of grammar lesson.
Yeah.
We've kind of skipped that a bit, but my kids know it. So
It's a little scary to people to think, wait, no curriculum, but I mean that's what Charlotte Mason is. It's
mhm.
just using real things to learn. And so yeah, when people say, what spelling curriculum do you use? I just go, I don't. And it sounds so
Yes,
scary,
yes,
but
you know,
I've seen the effectiveness. That's all I can say is, I have two graduates, a teenager. I've seen the effectiveness of good reading and lots of copying. So
You know what I love about it is that it's kind of wide open so that whatever age or whatever, really not even age, but whatever place the child's in, they pick up what they're able to pick up without us kind of force feeding, which
mhm,
what sometimes I feel like curriculum really kind of hammers in a point that we feel is important, but maybe they're just not ready to grasp, and it
yes,
can be so frustrating. And it can really give
yeah,
this feeling of like, I'm just dumb. I just don't, I just can't learn this. And
yeah.
if we can avoid that, then it gives our kids this confidence that they can't. It's sometimes hard to get back. It's actually one
It
of my biggest
does.
regrets with my older children.
Well, yeah, and like you were saying, sometimes you have to kind of know when they're ready for something and when they're not. I think that scares a lot of parents because it's easier to have a curriculum that tells you do this now, do this now. But when you've done homeschooling for a couple of years, you get a lot more confidence
Mhm.
in your ability to go, hey, I know what we're gonna do, instead of saying, what does the book tell me? And so obviously with child number 5, I've got this down.
Yeah.
So with her, I mean, she's never had a grammar or a spelling, but when she's been reviewing her phonics to read, which at 9, she's still going through that because she's very late to
Yeah.
start.
Yeah.
I will just notice something and go, oh, the KNOW word. Well, did you know that there's other words that sound like that, but they're spelled different? And it just comes to you while you're sitting there watching, and you go,
Exactly.
know what you need to know. It takes 5 minutes. There's no, and then there's no, and they both mean different things, and they're spelled differently. And it's really simple, even though it sounds kind of scary if
It
you've
does.
never been in charge of
It is, but
education.
you think about a baby coming out of the womb, and they learn these things, and we guide them, and we sort of feel comfortable with that, I think, a little
Mhm.
bit. And then at like age 5, we're like, okay, now we got to start teaching them the
We're
alphabet,
done.
and I don't know what to do with that,
And I
right?
need a worksheet for everything. Yeah.
Exactly. But the
Yeah.
truth is, like, when we teach language to our children, which we do naturally, when we teach them how to talk, we don't think about it. We just say, "Oh, you're saying that word a little wrong. Let's say," or you don't even say
Yeah.
that. We just, say it right, and
Yeah.
then eventually they pick it up, right? So,
Or tying their shoes or eating with a spoon, all those things. That's what I talk about in my book, is that we are already natural teachers. We just forget that when they turn 5, automatically we think, this other stuff I can't teach. And
mhm.
you can teach so much of it. You can teach all of it.
Yeah, yeah, that's such a good, and also our kids are natural learners. Like they are
They are.
definitely going to want to know.
They
So
are.
give them just give them something and they'll figure it out.
They will.
Anyway, okay. So you've already offered a ton of comfort, and I feel like confidence for folks who are, like, oh, I just don't think I can do this. But what words of wisdom can you share for somebody who's just really feeling like, I just don't know if I can do this?
Well, I will tell you, I told you that my mom homeschooled us starting in the 80s, and she did not graduate high school. She had me when she was 14 years old.
Wow.
Dropped out of school at that point and never went back.
Wow.
And so she's the first one that taught me that it can be done by anybody. When I was in high school, she finally went back and got a GED.
Wow.
But it didn't matter at that point. She'd already, because there's so many helps available. Even in the 80s, there was what she needed, the teacher guides and, and people around us who could say, wait, here, I can help you with that science,
Yeah.
And then I have done it through so many difficult times, and that includes single motherhood. I've done it as a working mom. I have had migraines my whole life. And so some days are just out the window.
Yeah.
And then I've had, with 5 pregnancies, have had terrible morning sickness for months, that kind of stuff. And so all kinds of situations that you think would make you say, I can't do it, that they got to go back to school. I just kept doing it, because what I realized is it's not about school. It's just, you're raising your kids and you don't stop feeding them when things get hard, and you don't stop providing clothes for them. You don't stop hugging them when life is difficult, or maybe you don't know everything there's to know about nutrition, or, all kinds of things. You figure it out and you keep on parenting. And so with homeschooling, it's the same thing. It's not, someone said, I think I saw this on Twitter or somewhere this week, someone said, it's not a preference. It's like a conviction. Like, I can do this because I am their parent, and there's nothing that's going to make that impossible. Things can make it difficult. They may change your plans, but there's no way that it's impossible, almost no way that I can think of that would make it impossible, because you're a family, you're not a school. And so you're still a parent. You're not suddenly teacher, even though you are teaching, but you already were doing that. Like we said, when they were babies and toddlers, you're already teaching. And so this is just an extension of that.
Yeah. I love that. Okay. So lastly, what's one little thing that you make part of your regular homeschool routine that just helps you and your kids all feel your happiest?
Well, I think when I feel happiest, they might not necessarily. Homeschool kids are not like all the same. They don't all love school. They don't love reading. They're not all, scholars that are going to Yale. I think some people try to push that idea. Yeah. Kids are kids.
I just say they don't all love Legos, because I feel like there's a Lego thing that they're like, oh, homeschoolers use Legos for everything.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Mine did. They grew out of the Legos now. And so they're all different. And so for me, my favorite thing is when we sit down and read together. And I usually read aloud an hour or more a day from different books. And then for them, it's different. It's usually a hands-on activity that they like the best. And so whether it's the food, or when we did World War II, the boys did model airplanes from that era. And so they really liked that.
Of course.
And they could do that while I was reading aloud. They could work on the gluing and painting. And so, and then my daughter too, they all like that, something that connects real life to history or whatever they're doing. So, and I like that too. I really just like it when something comes to life for them, when they go, oh, I do understand, so I think if you were going to ask what we all like, that's probably it.
Yeah, I agree. Those experiences, they can't be beat. Yeah, for sure. No. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Nicki, for joining us. Folks, make sure you connect with Nicki. Actually, Nicki, I forgot to ask you, what is the best way for folks to get in touch with you and kind of just stay?
My website is NickiTruesdell.com, and you can go there and find my Facebook and Instagram. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, all of that under my own name, Nicki Truesdell. And I've been blogging for 11 years, so there's a lot of content on my website, mostly about homeschooling, Christian parenting, a lot of history stuff. Those are my 3 favorite topics. And then you can order my new book there, Anyone Can Homeschool. It's what I just talked about, all those difficulties. Been there, done that, and anyone can do it. And so you can order that from my website, also on Amazon.
I love it. Thank you so much, Nicki, for joining us.
And me. It was fun.
Connect with her, stay connected, and I hope you're excited to start implementing or stop implementing some things and feel more confident in your homeschooling.
I hope so. Thank you.
Bye.